Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your new host, Nelson, and today I only have time for one segment for now. Soon I'll be working on delivering more segments for tomorrow and for Wednesday. But for now, since I'm only doing one segment, I'm going to talk about the big stories around the games that happened last night, because there were a few to bring up, including Damian Lillard's game winner. And as always, I ask that you remember to follow and subscribe to the show. If you want to become a member or part of the show, there's a link in the description. Please remember to tip and donate to get your comments recognized. Make sure you go to the following link, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. It helps make the show a lot more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. And we already have a Clippers fan in the chat who has a Ben Wallace image. Very, very interesting. But the link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And let's get into the segment, which is Dame time. So it was a big day for sports fans yesterday, not just in basketball, but also for football as well. Shout out to our football podcast that was just live earlier today. It was also a big day if you were a Wisconsin fan. Shout out to them Cowboys. I mean, what can go wrong will go wrong, but I digress. Now, about what went right, not only did the Packers deliver a win for Wisconsin, but later on that night, the Milwaukee Bucks were able to pull off a win in overtime against the Kings, winning 143-142. Now, the big story behind this game was Damian Lillard finally showing up, hitting a game-winning three to close out the game in overtime. He's widely regarded as one of the league's most clutch players in the NBA, and tonight he showed everybody exactly why. Now, the Bucks are winning games. However, some of these games shouldn't be this close. Like, the Kings are a good team, don't get me wrong, but the Milwaukee Bucks should, with the talent that they have with Giannis and Damian Lillard, and Chris Middleton, they should easily be beating these teams by a much wider margin. Dame might have won the game for them, but his shooting recently in most of these games has been inefficient. Now, Damian Lillard is a fantastic offensive player. Obviously, I said before, he's regarded as one of the most clutch players in the NBA. But the problem with Damian Lillard is if he isn't providing offensively, then he is stuck, and he is not as good of a defender as he should be. And this is one of the many overlooked reasons as to why Portland hasn't been able to make it far into the playoffs outside of 2019, because he needs to score in order to be effective. This puts a lot of pressure on him, since on Portland he was the main scoring option behind a weak defense, so he had to perform. But now that he's been on the Bucks recently, they haven't necessarily needed his offensive production just yet, because of how good Giannis is on both the defensive side of the floor and on the offensive side of the floor. Now, it's completely different than the situation in Portland, where his second option was CJ McCollum, who was just as good as offense as he was, but also not as good as defense as he was. Now, obviously, the shooting of Damian Lillard, it obviously hasn't been a problem for the Bucks, considering they are second in the Eastern Conference. So I feel like this would only be a problem in the playoffs, where you need to try to end these series quickly, so that way you could have more time to rest your players and go over and watch film and to compose yourselves and to get ready for the next game or the next series if you end up winning the series in 4 or 5. For now, I don't think it's time for the Bucks to panic. Obviously, as I mentioned before, they are the second seed in the Eastern Conference, and the Eastern Conference is incredibly top-heavy, And the only team I think they should really worry about is the Boston Celtics. Like, the two teams to beat in the Eastern Conference, in my opinion, are the Bucks and the Celtics. No team can compete with them unless Miami, I don't know, pulls off another upset like how they did last year, beating the number one seeded Bucks when they were the 8th seed. Now, Dame wasn't the only point guard who was clutch last night. We have a Clippers fan in the chat, so we might as well mention Russell Westbrook in the fourth quarter, where he had 10 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists while shooting 2 for 2 from 3. However, even with this clutch performance from Russell Westbrook, my bad, this isn't the biggest story of the night and in the game. And the big story was him missing a wide open layup in the fourth quarter, which would have probably made the game a little bit more competitive coming down the stretch. But the reason why this was getting a lot more attention was because there is a video circulating around on Twitter and on Instagram right now of Westbrook on the Clippers bench asking a fan to say, oh, wow, never mind. Clippers fan in the chat. He was saying how he was asking if Rudy Gobert was going to miss the free throw, and right when he says he's going to miss the free throw, he airballs it, and then the Clippers bench goes crazy. Now, unfortunately, karma's not the one to play games with, as Gobert ended up getting the last laugh, and the Timberwolves ended up winning the game. But just for the sake of the Clippers fan in the chat, I'll put this in perspective. Now, Kawhi and Paul George, they didn't necessarily have their best night offensively. Neither did Harden, and Zubac wasn't even in the game. And somehow they were still able to make the game against the 1 seed in their conference very competitive. The final score was 109 to 105. So the fact that the Clippers were able to... Yeah, I mentioned Harden. I said Harden didn't have a good game either. But even with all of this, I don't think it's time for the Clippers to panic yet either, because we know how they are in the regular season. They've been winning most of their games when their star players do play well. And come playoff game, it's most likely that Kawhi would be 100%. And when Kawhi's in the playoffs, he's practically unstoppable. He's also one of those players that has that clutch reputation. And if the rest of the players fall into place, the Clippers could make a very deep playoff run. But again, I'm sorry for the Clippers fan in the chat, but they have a very bad history of blowing leads. And the biggest question is if James Harden can meet the moment. Obviously, I'm not going to question if Paul George can meet the moment. He proved himself 2 years ago. And he didn't get the chance to play against the Phoenix Suns when they had Kevin Durant. Kawhi did prove himself, however, so we both know that they can perform in the playoffs. But if Harden is a top 5 shooting guard ever, but as of right now, he's one of the... He's notorious for not playing well in the postseason when the games really matter. Both the eye tests and the stats show this. He's made the playoffs 14 times, and 11 times his points per game dropped, and 10 times his efficiency dropped, not to mention his individual meltdowns in several important games. Now, if I were the Timberwolves, I'd be a little bit worried because I mentioned how Rudy Gobert missed 2 free throws, but after that, he made the next 4, and the Clippers ended up losing by 4. So those free throws he made had a really big role in them winning that game. Now, if your games have to come down to Rudy Gobert hitting some free throws, that's not the best situation to be in, considering he shoots 68% from the line, which is ironically better than Westbrook's free throw shooting at 64%. Now, in some surprising news in other games, the Miami Heat beat the Hornets in a blowout win, And towards the halftime, Pat Riley surprised Dwayne Wade on the news that he would get a big statue outside of the Miami Heat Stadium. So, congratulations to Dwayne Wade. He's arguably the franchise's best player. Now, LeBron might be the best player who ever wore a Heat jersey, but Dwayne Wade definitely had the best career as a Miami Heat player. He won 3 championships, so he was part of all the championships that the Miami Heat won. He was also able to accumulate a Finals MVP over Shaq. Kobe wasn't even able to do this in his prime. Dwayne Wade, however, did not accumulate an MVP, which many believed he was robbed of for certain years. But that's a different topic. I feel like this statue was definitely like most deserved. Like this should have been done a long time ago, simply because of Dwayne Wade's career and his reputation. He is a top 3 shooting guard ever in the NBA. Shaq over Kobe all time. That's Crucial PG has a lot to say in this chat, let me tell you. Shaq is, in my opinion, not better than Kobe all time. Unless if we're talking about Laker career, maybe simply because Shaq has those 3 Finals MVPs, even though I personally think Kobe is a much better Laker and a much better player than Shaq. But that's definitely up for debate. I mean, I have Kobe in top 3. A lot of people put Kobe at 8 and Shaq either right in front of him or right behind him. So that's up for debate. But more on Dwayne Wade. He was put to tears in the halftime presentation because I guess he just wasn't expecting a statue there, even though like I believe like he definitely should have gotten one. What would be really cool is if they made, that iconic picture of Dwayne Wade throwing a bounce pass to LeBron and him looking away to the crowd. That would be a really good statue because it definitely highlights both of those players winning back-to-back championships. And that is most of the championships that they've won. It was the most iconic time to be a Miami Heat fan. And Kawhi Leonard obviously was the other player to beat the Miami Heat, and we were talking about him and his playoff reputation. So that definitely plays into the Clippers being one of the favorites or a dark horse candidate. They do hold a high seed right now, so they do not have to worry about playing in the play-in, unlike the Los Angeles Lakers, who are falling really deep into the play-in. And they might have to play a couple more games and face off a much more difficult competition and a much more difficult road in order to get to the finals. And obviously the hate for LeBron James, it's going to skyrocket if he doesn't perform, so he must definitely do that. And I believe right now we are out of time for the rest of this stream. As always, thank you for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe, remember to tip and to donate. I'll say the link again. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. I'm your host, Nelson Jimenez, and as always, take care.